Not from the defense, Your Honor.
Anything from the state?
Excuse me, nothing from the state, Your Honor.
All right. Bring in the jury. You're still with us, Dr. Dragovich?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
Hold on to this. We'll discuss it after.
Very well. We continue now with cross-examination from the state.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Dragovich, can you see me and hear me okay?
I can hear you,
Okay.
sir.
In your report, you stated that Michael took an excessive amount of enclomiphene citrate. Is that right?
I couldn't hear this part. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay. In your report, you stated that Michael Cochran took an excessive amount of enclomiphene citrate. Is that correct?
yes.
Where did that information come from?
From the material that I reviewed. I believe that was the account that was provided by his spouse.
Okay. Were you aware that that substance was tested by the FBI?
Again, something I've learned. Was I aware of what?
That substance had been tested by the FBI?
I'm going to object to that, Your Honor. That hasn't been established yet. There's no reference to what substance, how it was achieved, anything about the specifics.
Your Honor, that has been established. It has been brought into evidence already with both of the FBI gentlemen that testified here. And you heard Lieutenant Bledsoe testify that he received that bottle from Donna Bolt, who advised that she received it from the defendant.
Objections overruled. Pose the question again so that the witness can hear.
Dr. Dragovich, were you aware that the bottle of enclomiphene citrate provided by the defendant was tested by the FBI?
No.
So you were not aware that that bottle was actually found to contain letrozole and not enclomiphene citrate?
No. Yes,
Your Honor,
that's correct. That's correct. I do not know.
In
May we
your
approach the bench, Your Honor?
All right.
Dr. Dragovich, in your review of the records, did you see any evidence that indicated letrozole or even enclomiphene citrate overdose or usage?
Not that I remember. No, ma'am.
And where did you get the information that Michael had a seizure?
The hospital, right?
Do you know where that initially came from in your review of the records?
Well, it would be also from the account that the spouse provided at the efficiency.
And were you aware of any seizures being observed in the hospital setting?
It seems to me that there were some, but I don't remember specifically every page from the medical records, man.
That's okay, I understand. It was a lot of records. Did anything in the medical records substantiate that Michael had a seizure that you recall?
Again, I don't have the materials in front of me, so I can't recall specifically. There was multiplied reference of encephalopathy, but it seems to me that there were references to seizures, either as historical, being presented at the time, or happening there. But I cannot. It's all blurred now in my mind. I'm sorry.
Okay. In your report, you stated that there was evidence that Michael had had a head injury. Is that right?
Yes, that was also from the account upon arrival to the hospital.
Was there any evidence that you recall in the actual medical records that indicate that a traumatic head injury had occurred?
No, that was not addressed in the medical records.
And in your report, you also stated that the defendant was the one who took the deceased to the hospital. Would it surprise you to know that that was not accurate based on the testimony we've heard?
I lost the couple of words there. It got blurred. I'm sorry. Can you repeat it?
Sure. In your report, you stated that the defendant was actually the one who took Michael Cochran to the hospital. Do you recall that? I think we might be having some connectivity issues, Judge.
Are you having difficulty hearing the question, Doctor?
No. I'm looking at at my second page there, and yes, that was my impression that Senator Cochran brought him to Raleigh General Hospital, emergency room.
Would it surprise you to know, Doctor, that based on the evidence we've received, the defendant actually watched for 7 to 8 hours and a friend actually transported him to the hospital later that day?
That may be the case. I mean, I was not there. I only put what I read was the information I had in order to kind of gain what was happening at a time.
We'll go back into the medical records. Your report indicates that Mr. Cochran's initial blood glucose at Raleigh General was 76, followed by a next reading of 24. Is that right?
Yes.
However, the evidence actually indicates that the initial blood glucose on arrival was 21. So where in the records did you locate that information?
I can't tell you off the top of my head, but I know for the fact that there were references to low blood glucose. And what particular level was at the time of particular hospital admission, I cannot recall now.
Doctor, did you review the MRI of Michael Cochran's brain that was obtained at CAMC on 2/8 of 19?
No, but I read the report and there was evidence of encephalopathy there.
In that report, isn't it true that the diagnosis was actually diffuse hypoglycemic encephalopathy?
Yes, that was written in, yes.
And what does that indicate to you, Doctor?
I'm sorry?
What does that indicate to you, that diagnosis?
And diagnosis indicates that there is a hypoglycemic encephalopathy, and that's the point of organization of trying to treat the condition and also to find out why and how this encephalopathy occurred.
Doctor, in your professional opinion, is a blood glucose of 21 compatible with life?
It may or may not be, depending on how fast one reacts to correcting its level of circulating glucose.
And just very briefly, was it your testimony that, just so I understand, that tumor tissue would decompose more slowly than normal organ tissue?
Well, certain tumor tissues that are so-called solid tumors in certain tissues and organs of the body may be undergoing slower decomposition because they're harder than the surrounding quote-unquote normal tissue. So that can happen. And I've seen that in my practice pretty regularly. I've seen extremely decomposed body of an individual falling apart, and yet tumor nodules sticking out because they decompose slowly. It depends on the nature of the tumor.
Now, Dr. Uribe and Dr. Krieger were not given the benefit of reviewing one another's reports prior to creating their reports, but you were able to review both of their reports in creating yours. Is that right?
Yes.
And you were hired by the defense, is that correct?
I was contacted by the defense. That's correct, yes. And they asked me to...
It's not a trick question, doctor, I promise. I'm not trying to trip you up in any way. Were you compensated for generating a report in this matter, or will you be?
No, I was not. I am certainly not compensated for the time here because this is my taxpayer time, and my government will send a bill to the lawyers for today. But I think I had about 14 to 16 hours of time put in this, so that was obviously my work after hours. So I will bill for that at my government rate, which is $250 per hour.
Now, when you were creating the report that you generated in this matter, did you initially provide defense counsel with a draft report?
I believe I sent a draft to see if there was anything else that needed to be added to it.
And did you make changes to your report based on commentary that you received?
Your Honor, please note an ongoing objection to this line of questioning.
Very well. It will be preserved.
I am not sure that I made much in a way, some typo errors because my secretary made some typographic errors, but there might have been something added. I will have to look back and try to compare that and give you the exact answer. But substantial changes, no, of course not.
Is it true that you were asked to go into more detail as to how Drs. Uribe and Dr. Krieger were wrong in that draft report?
No, let me explain something. I don't believe that I ever said anything about Dr. I don't want to butcher her name. Krieger. Dr. Krieger's report is clinically accurate report. I have no arguments with that report. Well, I have no arguments with Dr. Uribe except for his opinion. If Dr. Uribe, who is my colleague, presented any tangible evidence, I would have not have any opposing opinion. But there wasn't anything, and a forensic pathologist is there to interpret evidence. If there is no evidence, there is nothing to interpret, man.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like this to be marked as the state's next exhibit.
It will be State's Exhibit number 32, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I would also move for the admission of States 32.
.32 is the draft.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Any further objections?
Yes, Your Honor. Just a moment. I object to the admission of this exhibit.
All right, I'll admit it over the defense objections, and I'll preserve the defendant's objections.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Dragovich, in your professional opinion, what killed Michael Cochran?
I don't know.
So you don't believe that the profound hypoglycemia or the swelling on his brain caused by the hypoglycemia contributed to his death in any way?
I'm going to object to the form of that question. There's no evidence that his hypoglycemia caused the swelling of his brain. That's a mischaracterization of the evidence.
Your Honor, the diagnosis on that MRI is diffuse hypoglycemic encephalopathy.
I'll overrule the objection. You may continue. Ask the question again, Ms. Akron.
Dr. Dragovich, the question was, you do not believe that the decedent's profound hypoglycemia or the significant swelling on his brain caused by that hypoglycemia led to his death.
I would think that's one of the components, but why and how it happened and what the proximate causes are have not been defined whatsoever. So the autopsy did not reveal anything along the line, and it did not show that on brain examination that there was anything but decomposition changes according to the autopsy report.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I have no further questions.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Redirect, Mr. Selden.
Yes, Your Honor. Can I have just a moment?
Sure.
Your Honor, procedurally, I believe that I would like a continuing objection to the last state's exhibit, the alleged draft report. And I believe that there were questions as to whether Dr. Dragovich had received it, what information was exchanged, and Dr. Dragovich, at this point, has not seen this particular exhibit as entered by the state. I believe procedurally he would have to see this exhibit before we proceed further on it.
Well, he referenced it in his testimony, and I've given you a running objection. I've preserved your exceptions, and I'll continue to do so.
All right, first of all, I would like to get the state's last exhibit.
All right, it should be up here with the clerk.
Dr. Dragovich, I'm going to ask you some questions on this last state's exhibit, which is stamped draft on it. Okay?
Okay.
And I admit that I prepared this, or you prepared this draft report. I received it, and I made some notations on it. Given that, I'm going to go through these alleged changes. I circled your initial submission date of December 12th of 2024 and I asked you to change the date to January 6th of 2025 because that's when you submitted your final version of this report. Would you remember that, or does that seem correct to you?
Yeah, that seems to be correct, yes.
Okay. On the second page of this draft report, I circled a date that you had listed as February 16th, 2019, as the date when Michael Cochran's seizures first started around noon. I corrected that because that was an incorrect date. I notated that the correct date was not February 16th, but February 6th of 2019. Do you recall that?
Yeah, that was a typographic error on the part of my typist here.
Okay.
They're trying to type up a load of report daily, and these things happen. So anything that's wrong tends to be corrected.
Okay. And I circled the word ALL and pointed out that was a typographical error. It should be FALL for fall, not all. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In one line, you're talking about some information that was relayed. You put your client, and I circled that and asked you to clarify it to Natalie Cochran. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. In the second paragraph on that page, I circled a representation in that report that Michael Cochran's suspicious circumstances of his death triggered an investigation that resulted in an exhumation and an autopsy, and you had 8 months. I corrected that to 7 months. Was that correction proper?
Yes, sir.
On the last page, in the third paragraph, you end that paragraph with the word infant. I circled that and put a notation to admit it. Michael Cochran was not an infant. Is that correct?
Yes, I was puzzled by that word, but I didn't want to go back to my secretary and criticize her for putting a word that didn't belong. But at the end of the sentence, I don't know, maybe she was typing several reports simultaneously, who knows.
Okay, and that correction, you said it was because your secretary maybe was in a hurry, whatever. That doesn't change the substance of your report at all, does it?
No, those are the typographic errors. They are, I suppose, inevitable when one does the work. Only people that don't do anything do not make any mistakes. Mistakes tend to be corrected. That's it.
Okay. And in the next to the last paragraph, you're talking about Dr. Krieger and Dr. Uribe's mischaracterization, or their findings are not credible or well-reasoned. I simply made a notation in that paragraph and I asked, can you go into more detail as to how Doctors Uribe and Krieger are wrong? You did make that representation in your report earlier, did you not?
I did.
Okay, so am I asking you to change your report? Am I asking you to do anything that would affect your conclusions?
No, sir.
As to your eventual final report, do any of these changes affect your conclusions, the validity, anything in your reasoning?
Absolutely not, sir.
I'm returning the exhibit, Your Honor.
All right.
You were not present when there was witness testimony or Drs. Uribe and Dr. Krieger gave their testimony. You didn't hear any of that testimony, is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. There were some questions directed about the enclophamine vial. I submit that that enclophamine vial was given to the FBI by Michael Cochran's mother, Donna. Does that information change anything in your report or cause you any concern about your conclusions?
No, sir.
And it's true, is it not, that Michael Cochran's medical records contain previous seizures that occurred in October 31st through the first week or two in November. That's documented in the medical records, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And I believe there was some mischaracterization about Natalie Cochran driving Michael to the hospital and some misrepresentations about that. The testimony.
To characterizing the prosecution's questions as mischaracterization and misrepresentation.
Sustained.
The previous testimony that in this case shows that although Natalie Cochran herself didn't drive the car to the hospital, she was in the car with Michael, with other people, when Michael was taken to the hospital. Would that information change anything in your report and your conclusions at all?
No, sir.
One moment, Your Honor.
Okay.
Dr. Dragovich, there were some questions by the prosecution about who hired you, who's paying your bills, etc. Would it interest you to know that Natalie Cochran's representation is court-appointed and the state of West Virginia would be paying any of your billings? Do you understand that?
I did not know the particulars. There's no difference whatsoever. As I said, in criminal cases, I apply for my time after hours, my government rate. My government rate is $2.50 per hour, and for this testimony, you'll be getting an invoice from my government for these several hours, and for the rest of the hours, I'll be sending you the invoice for that same, based on that same rate.
Would any of the questions on cross-examination change your conclusion that the cause and manner of Michael Cochran's death is undetermined and undeterminable?
No, sir.
And in answer to the prosecutor's question, what killed Michael Cochran, you simply stated you don't know, and all of that reasoning is in your report. Is that correct?
That is correct. And consequences are also correct in the medical record and in the radiographic imaging. But the cause and the manner are not and cannot be defined on the basis of that.
I have no more questions.
Anything further, Ms. Acorn?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Any reason to hold Dr. Dragovich?
Not on behalf of the state, Your Honor.
Not.
Thank you very much, Doctor. You are excused.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
You're very welcome.